After my father's death, my mom and I started doing it regularly. Our neighbors found out, recorded it, and posted everything online. My life is now ruined. Hey everyone, I need to get something off my chest. I know this is probably the worst place to do it, but I don't have anyone else to talk to. My name is Asa, and I'm 23. This story is going to sound messed up, but please try to understand. I've never been great at writing, so bear with me. My dad, Jebediah, passed away 6 months ago. He had been battling cancer for years, and when he finally went, it was like someone ripped my heart out and stomped on it. Mom, Araceli, was devastated too. She and Dad were high school sweethearts, together for over 30 years. She was always the strong one, the rock of our family, but after Dad died, she crumbled. Dad's cancer journey was brutal. He was diagnosed when I was still in college. At first, we all thought he'd beat it. The doctors were optimistic, and Dad was a fighter. But cancer doesn't give a shit about optimism. It took its toll, dragging him through chemo, radiation, and endless hospital visits. By the end, he was a shell of the man I grew up admiring. Watching him waste away was like living in a slow-motion horror movie. Every day I felt more helpless, watching the person I loved most in the world slip away. The night Dad died, it was raining. I remember because I stood by his hospital bed, listening to the rain tapping against the window. Mom was holding his hand, whispering to him, telling him it was okay to let go. When he took his last breath, it felt like the world stopped. I didn't cry at first. I just stood there, numb, while Mom sobbed. The nurses came in offering their condolences, but it all felt so distant, like I was watching it happen to someone else. The funeral was a blur. Friends and family came to pay their respects, but their words felt hollow. He's in a better place now, they'd say. He's not suffering anymore. I wanted to scream at them. What the fuck did they know? They weren't the ones who had to watch him die, piece by piece. After the funeral, the house felt like a tomb. Dad's laughter, his music, the way he'd always be tinkering in the garage, all of it was gone. Mom and I were like ghosts in our own home, just passing each other in the halls, both drowning in our grief. We tried to keep busy, but nothing filled the void. I'd find myself wandering into Dad's study, running my fingers over his books, his tools, anything that still held a piece of him. It hurt like hell, but it was better than feeling nothing. One night, about a month after Dad's funeral, I found Mom in the living room, sitting in the dark. She was holding a photo of Dad and crying. She looked so small, so broken. I'd never seen her like that before. Mom was always the strong one, the glue that held us together. Seeing her like that tore me apart. I sat down next to her, not knowing what to say. What could I say? We just sat there in silence for what felt like hours. Then she looked at me, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Asa," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know how to do this without him." That's when I broke. I started crying, and before I knew it, we were hugging each other, sobbing like kids. It was like all the pain and grief we'd been holding in finally exploded. We cried until there were no tears left, just a hollow ache in our chests. Then, something happened that I can't fully explain. In that moment of raw, desperate grief, we found a strange kind of comfort in each other. We kissed. It wasn't a normal kiss. It was desperate and sad and full of all the things we couldn't say. Before I knew it, we were doing things that no mother and son should ever do. I know it's fucked up. I know. But in that moment, it felt like the only way to feel anything other than pain. We were both so broken, and we found a way to escape, even if it was just for a little while. It became our secret, this dark thing we did when the grief got too much. We both knew it was wrong, but we couldn't stop. The first time it happened, I was in shock. Afterward, we just sat there, not knowing what to say. I wanted to apologize, to scream, to run away, but I couldn't move. Mom was the first to speak. "Asa, we can't let this happen again." she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But even as she said it, I could see the doubt in her eyes. We were both trapped in this fucked up cycle of grief and need. The next day, we didn't talk about it. It was like an unspoken rule. We'd go to our separate rooms, pretending to be normal, but at night, the silence was filled with whispers and secrets. It was our way of coping, but it was also tearing us apart. Looking back, I know we should have sought help. We should have talked to someone, anyone, but we were too ashamed, too afraid of what people would think. So we kept it to ourselves, hoping that somehow we could make it through the darkness. After that night, things changed between Mom and me. During the day, we were just mother and son, trying to keep up appearances. But at night, when the house was quiet and the world felt far away, we'd find each other. It was like we were possessed, driven by a need to escape the crushing loneliness. I remember the first morning after it happened. The sun was just starting to peek through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room. I woke up in my own bed, alone, feeling like I had been hit by a truck. My head was pounding, my mouth dry, and my heart heavy with guilt and confusion. I could hear Mom moving around in the kitchen, the clatter of dishes and the hum of the coffee maker. I forced myself out of bed, my body aching, and made my way downstairs. Mom was standing at the counter, staring blankly into a cup of coffee. She looked up when she heard me, and for a moment, we just stared at each other, the weight of what we had done hanging between us, like a dark cloud. Finally, she spoke. "Morning, Asa," she said, her voice trembling. "Coffee?" I nodded, unable to find my voice, and she poured me a cup. We sat at the kitchen table, the silence between us thick and suffocating. I wanted to say something, to apologize, to make sense of what had happened, but the words wouldn't come. Mom looked just as lost, her eyes red-rimmed and tired. We were both trapped in this nightmare, and there was no easy way out. Days turned into weeks, and we fell into a strange routine. During the day, we tried to keep up appearances, going about our lives as if nothing had changed. Mom would go to work at the local library, and I would pretend to look for a job, sending out resumes, and going to interviews that felt like exercises in futility. But at night, when the house was quiet and the world felt far away, we would find each other. It became our dark secret, this thing we did to escape the crushing loneliness and grief. We both knew it was wrong, but we couldn't stop. It was like a drug, a way to numb the pain, even if only for a little while. We'd meet in the living room or the kitchen, anywhere we could be alone, and we'd give in to the desperation that gnawed at us. It wasn't about love or desire. It was about survival, about finding a way to feel something other than the hollow ache that had consumed us since Dad died. Our neighbors, the Wendelsons, had always been nosy. Mrs. Wendelson, Harriet, was the worst. She had this creepy habit of peering over our fence, always watching. I didn't think much of it at first, but then things got weird. One night I noticed a light flashing outside my window. I was in the living room with Mom, and we were in the middle of, well, I saw the light out of the corner of my eye, and my blood ran cold. It was Harriet's phone. She was recording us. I panicked and pulled the curtain shut, but the damage was done. She had seen us. I felt sick to my stomach. What if she told someone? What if the whole neighborhood found out? I confronted Mom about it, but she just brushed it off. "She's just a nosy old bat," she said, trying to reassure me. "She won't do anything." But I wasn't so sure. Harriet had a mean streak, and I knew she'd love nothing more than to have some juicy gossip to spread. We tried to carry on as if nothing had happened, but the fear was always there, lurking in the back of my mind. Every time I saw Harriet, I felt a jolt of panic. What if she had told someone? What if she was planning to use the video to blackmail us? I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Our dark secret began to take its toll. I was constantly on edge, unable to sleep, plagued by nightmares of being exposed. Mom wasn't doing much better. She tried to stay strong, but I could see the cracks forming. She was more distant, more withdrawn, and I knew she was struggling just as much as I was. The tension between us grew. We started to argue, our grief and guilt boiling over into anger. "This can't go on, Asa," Mom said one night, her voice trembling. "We're destroying ourselves." "I know, Mom," I said, my own voice shaking. "But what are we supposed to do? How do we fix this?" I don't know," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know." Despite our arguments and the mounting tension, we couldn't stop. It was like a vicious cycle, a trap we couldn't escape. The more we tried to distance ourselves, the more we were drawn back together, bound by our shared grief and the secret that was slowly tearing us apart. I started to withdraw from my friends, too ashamed and afraid to face them. They noticed the change in me, but I couldn't tell them the truth. How could I? How do you explain something like this? So I pushed them away, retreating further into my own misery. One evening, I was at the grocery store when I ran into an old friend, Laramie. We used to be close, but we'd drifted apart over the years. She smiled when she saw me, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "Asa, it's been ages. How have you been?" I forced a smile, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been okay, just, busy." She frowned, not buying it. "I heard about your dad. I'm so sorry, Asa. How's your mom holding up?" My heart clenched, and I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. She's managing. We're both just trying to get through it." Laramie reached out and squeezed my arm. "If you ever need to talk, you know where to find me." I nodded, but I knew I'd never take her up on the offer. How could I? How could I burden her with the twisted mess my life had become? That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling more alone than ever. I couldn't keep living like this, but I didn't know how to break free. The fear, the guilt, the shame, it was all too much. I felt like I was drowning, and there was no one to save me. The next morning, I decided to take a walk, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. As I stepped outside, I saw Harriet standing in her yard, her phone in hand. She looked up and saw me, a smug smile spreading across her face. My blood boiled. I wanted to march over there and demand she delete the video, but I knew it wouldn't do any good. She had us right where she wanted us, and there was nothing I could do about it. As the days went on, the fear and tension grew. I could feel the walls closing in, the darkness creeping closer. I didn't know how much longer I could keep it together. Something had to give, but I was terrified of what would happen when it did. The breaking point came one night when I overheard Mom on the phone. She was talking to her sister, Aunt Geneva, and I could hear the desperation in her voice. "I don't know what to do, Geneva," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm so lost without Jebediah and Asa. I'm worried about him. He's not the same." I felt a pang of guilt and shame. I was causing her even more pain, adding to her already unbearable grief. I couldn't keep doing this to her, to us. Something had to change, but I didn't know where to start. That night, as we sat in the living room, the silence thick between us, I finally spoke up. "Mom, we need to talk." She looked up, her eyes weary. "I know, Asa. I've been thinking the same thing." "We can't keep doing this," I said, my voice trembling. "It's killing us." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know, but how do we stop? How do we move on?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but we have to try. We can't let this destroy us." We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of our grief and guilt pressing down on us. But in that moment, I knew we had taken the first step toward healing. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be long and painful, but we had to try. We owed it to Dad, to ourselves, to find a way out of the darkness. A week later, the shit hit the fan. I woke up to a dozen messages on my phone. Friends, acquaintances, even people I barely knew, all asking the same thing. Is it true? My heart sank. I opened my social media, and there it was, the video. Harriet had posted it online. It was blurry and shaky, but there was no mistaking what we were doing. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My hands shook as I scrolled through the comments. People were tearing us apart, calling us disgusting, sick perverts. My friends abandoned me. I lost my job. Everywhere I went, I could feel people staring, whispering. It was a nightmare. I ran downstairs, my heart pounding. "Mom!" I shouted, panic rising in my chest. "Mom, wake up!" Mom came rushing out of her bedroom, her face pale. "What is it, Asa? What's wrong?" I couldn't find the words. I just handed her my phone, showing her the video. Her eyes widened in horror, and she covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "What have we done?" We both sat there, numb, as the reality of our situation sank in. Our darkest secret was out, and there was no way to take it back. I felt sick to my stomach. How could Harriet do this to us? What kind of person would be so cruel? Mom tried to comfort me, but she was just as scared. "We'll get through this, Asa," she said, her voice trembling. "We'll figure something out." But her words felt hollow. How could we ever get through this? Our lives were ruined. I couldn't even look at my phone without feeling a wave of shame and fear. The comments were brutal. People I didn't even know hurling insults and threats. I felt like a pariah, a freak, and there was no escape. Mom and I became prisoners in our own home. We barely left the house, afraid of the judgment and the whispers. The walls felt like they were closing in on us. Our dark secret was out, and there was no escaping it. We sat there, holding each other, our tears mingling. It was a moment of raw, desperate vulnerability, and it reminded me that despite everything, we still had each other. We were broken, but we weren't alone. In the weeks that followed, we tried to rebuild our lives. Ruben was relentless, working tirelessly to get the video taken down and to hold Harriet accountable. It was a slow, painful process, but he was determined. Mom and I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Leora. She was kind and understanding, and for the first time, we felt like someone was really listening to us. We told her everything about Dad, the grief, the secret with Mom. She didn't judge us. Instead, she helped us see that what we did was a result of our overwhelming grief, not some inherent sickness. Dr. Leora encouraged us to talk to each other, to really talk. It was the hardest conversation we'd ever had, but it was also the most important. We cried, we yelled, we apologized. We promised each other that we'd never let our grief consume us like that again. Slowly, we started to reclaim our lives. The road to healing was long and painful, but we took it one step at a time. We found a new normal, one that wasn't tainted by our dark secret. We made new friends, people who didn't know about our past. We found a way to move forward, even if the scars would always remain. Months passed, and the scandal slowly faded from people's minds, but the damage to our reputation was irreversible. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, but I knew we had to find a way out of this darkness. Despite everything, Mom and I grew closer. We leaned on each other, finding strength in our shared pain. We weren't the same people we were before, but we were stronger, more resilient. We'd faced our worst nightmare and come out the other side. We also took legal action against Harriet. It was a long shot, but we needed to do something. To our surprise, we won the case. Harriet was ordered to take down the video and pay damages. It didn't fix everything, but it was a small victory, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Life would never be the same, but we were learning to live with the pain, to find moments of joy amidst the sorrow. We couldn't change the past, but we could choose how we moved forward. And that was enough. For now, it was enough. Update. Hey everyone, it's Asa. I wanted to give you all an update on how things have been going since I last posted. It's been a hell of a ride, but I finally feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Here's what's been happening. Mom and I have been seeing Dr. Leora regularly, and it's made a huge difference. Therapy isn't a magic fix, but it's helped us understand our grief and how it led to our actions. We've been working through our guilt and shame, trying to rebuild our relationship in a healthy way. It's been a long, painful process, but we're making progress. One thing Dr. Leora suggested was that we start doing activities together that remind us of the good times with Dad. We've been going on hikes, cooking his favorite recipes, and even tinkering in the garage with his old tools. It's been bittersweet, but it's helping us heal. Surprisingly, we've received some support from the community. After the legal case against Harriet was publicized, a few brave souls reached out to us, offering their support and understanding. It turns out not everyone is as judgmental as we feared. Some people even shared their own stories of grief and loss, reminding us that we're not alone in our pain. One of our biggest supporters has been Laramie. After running into her at the grocery store, she kept in touch, checking in on us regularly. She's been a rock, helping us navigate the fallout and offering a shoulder to cry on when things get tough. Her kindness has been a lifeline. With Harriet legally forced to take down the video and pay damages, things have started to improve. The video is still out there, in the dark corners of the internet, but the immediate threat is gone. We're focusing on moving forward, one step at a time. I found a new job working for a small tech company in town. It's not glamorous, but it's a fresh start. My coworkers don't know about my past, and I plan to keep it that way. It's a chance to reinvent myself, to build a new life untainted by the scandal. Mom has started volunteering at a local charity, helping other families dealing with grief. It's been therapeutic for her, giving her a sense of purpose and a way to channel her pain into something positive. She's made new friends, people who don't know about our past, and it's given her a new lease on life. The scars from our ordeal will always be there, but we're learning to live with them. We've accepted that we made a terrible mistake, but we're determined not to let it define us. We're not the same people we were before, but we're stronger, more resilient. One of the hardest parts of this journey has been forgiving ourselves. It's easy to get stuck in the cycle of guilt and shame, but we're working on it. Every day is a struggle, but we're taking it one day at a time. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm cautiously optimistic. We've been through hell and back, but we're still standing. We're still here, and that counts for something. To anyone out there who's struggling with grief, guilt, or shame, I want you to know that you're not alone. It's a dark, lonely place, but there is a way out. It's not easy, and it won't happen overnight, but there is hope. Reach out, get help, and keep fighting. You're stronger than you think. Thanks for listening, everyone. Your support means the world to me. I'll keep you updated on our journey. Take care. Final update. Hey everyone, it's Asa again. I wish I were here with better news, but life has a way of kicking you when you're already down. I want to share what's been happening, and hopefully it'll be the last chapter in this painful story. Things were starting to look up for us. Mom and I were healing, slowly but surely. We were making progress in therapy, rebuilding our lives, and finding a new normal. But then, out of nowhere, everything changed. Mom started feeling unwell a few months ago. At first, we thought it was just the stress catching up with her. She was tired all the time, and she had these terrible headaches. We went to the doctor, hoping it was something minor, but it wasn't. The news was devastating. Mom had a brain tumor. It was aggressive, and the doctors didn't give us much hope. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. We had just started to put the pieces of our lives back together, and now this. I couldn't believe it. It was like some cruel joke, another twist in our already twisted story. Mom was a fighter. Even after everything we'd been through, she faced this new challenge with strength and grace. She underwent treatment, hoping for a miracle. I was by her side every step of the way, just like she had been for me. The treatments were brutal. Chemo, radiation. It was a nightmare. Watching her go through that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. She was in so much pain, but she never complained. She just kept fighting, kept hoping. In the midst of it all, we tried to make the most of our time together. We talked a lot, reminiscing about the good times and dreaming about the future we wished we could have. We laughed, we cried, and we held each other close. It was bittersweet, knowing our time was running out. Mom passed away a few weeks ago. She died at home, surrounded by the things she loved. I was holding her hand just like she had held Dad's. It was peaceful, but it broke me in ways I didn't think were possible. Losing her was like losing a part of myself. She was my rock, my anchor, and now she's gone. I organized a small funeral, just family and a few close friends. It was beautiful, a fitting tribute to the amazing woman she was, but it felt surreal, like I was living someone else's life. I couldn't believe she was really gone. Now, I'm alone. The house feels emptier than ever. Every room holds a memory, every corner a reminder of what I've lost. The silence is deafening. I miss her so much it hurts to breathe. I'm still seeing Dr. Leora, but it's different now. I'm grieving all over again, and it's a whole new kind of pain. She's helping me navigate this, but it's a slow, painful process. Some days I don't even want to get out of bed, but I know I have to keep going. For Mom, for Dad, for myself. I've been leaning on the support of friends, especially Laramie. She's been incredible, helping me through the darkest days. I don't know what I'd do without her. She's been my lifeline, my beacon of hope. I've also thrown myself into work, trying to keep busy, trying to find some sense of normalcy. It's hard, but it helps. One day at a time, that's all I can manage right now. I've started a journal, writing down my thoughts, my memories, my pain. It helps to get it out, to put it into words. It's a way to keep Mom close, to remember the good times and hold on to the love we shared. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, and it's up to us to find a way through. Losing Mom has been the hardest thing I've ever faced, but I'm trying to keep moving forward. I'm trying to honor her memory by living the best life I can, even when it feels impossible. To anyone out there dealing with loss, grief, or overwhelming pain, you're not alone. Reach out, get help, and keep fighting. There's no easy way through it, but there is a way. We're stronger than we think, and we can survive more than we ever imagined. Thank you for listening, for your support, and for being there through this journey. It means more to me than words can express. Take care, everyone.